Orthography for reading. In this module, we're going to discuss some of the frequently used orthographic rules in English and some ideas about how you can present these to students to help them when decoding for reading. First, it's really important that students understand the importance of learning these rules and how they apply when decoding words. A lot of times students seem to get really frustrated with spelling and see spelling as an unorganized and ambiguous task when really English spelling is actually very predictable. So research shows that English is approximately 87% orthographically regular, leaving only about 15% that is irregular. In the same way, there's also a high degree in phonetic regularity. So this just means that letter-sound correspondences are really consistent, and actually they're about 97% accurate based on research. For example, the letter B always says B. We'll start with some basic definitions that are really important for students to know and to be able to recognize. So first we have a consonant blend. Do they know that a consonant blend is when 2 or 3 letters are together where all sounds are heard, like in sk, st, or bl? Or a digraph where 2 letters make one sound, like ch, sh, w, k. And then there's a trigraph where 3 letters make one sound, like in ch and j. Knowing these definitions and being able to identify these can make a big difference in students' ability to decode words when reading. One way students can practice these skills is by putting words together using cards with different sounds on them. So include those digraphs and trigraphs to show them that 2 or 3 letters can make only one sound together. Now we'll go through some of the most common spelling rules. The important thing to remember here when teaching students is to keep it really short and simple so they don't get confused and they're able to make sense of all this somewhat complicated information. Our first rule is TCH. TCH spelling is used after a short vowel and in stressed syllables. So to the right are some examples. Look at the word hatch. Hatch has the short vowel a followed immediately by the ch sound, so we use the TCH spelling. The same is true with hutch. It has the short vowel immediately followed by ch. Now skip down to kitchen. The ch sound is in the stressed syllable kitch, so we use TCH spelling. Now below are some examples where we do not use TCH. Look at the word peach. It has the long vowel E that is immediately before the ch sound. So since it's a long vowel, we use CH spelling only. The same is true for lunch. Use the CH spelling because the vowel is broken up from the ch sound by the consonant N. DGE spelling follows the same rule as TCH. It is used after a short vowel and in stressed syllables, not after a consonant. It's helpful for students to know that there are no English words that end in the letter J spelling. So if a word ends in the J sound, the spelling will either be DGE or GE. Here are some examples. Look at the word lodge. Lodge has the short vowel A immediately before J, so we end that word in DGE. The same is true with fudge and wedge. They have short vowels immediately before J, so the spelling is DGE. Then look down at the word beige. This word has the long vowel A immediately before J, so since it's a long vowel, we only use the GE spelling. Then large and hinge both have a consonant that breaks up the vowel and the J spelling. So since the consonant is immediately before J, we only use GE. Just like TCH and DGE, the CK rule is the same. So these three are great to teach consecutively. It follows The same rule after a short vowel and in stressed syllables. So look at these examples. The word track has the short vowel a immediately before the k sound, so we use the CK spelling. The same is true for check with the short vowel e. Then the multisyllabic word stackable, the k sound is in the stressed syllable stack, so use the CK spelling. Then look down at the word steak. Steak has the long vowel a immediately before the k sound, so it is only the k spelling. And then the word tank, the vowel is broken up from the k sound with the consonant n, so only use the k spelling. The k spelling is used in front of I or E. So here's a trick to help students remember this rule. If the next letter is I or E, use K instead of C. We use K for the k sound in front of I or E because if we use C, it makes the s sound. Here are some examples. Look at the word kids. The k is immediately followed by an I, so we use the K spelling. The same is true with kindergartner. The k sound is followed by I, and the word keep, the k sound is followed by E, so use the K spelling. Then look at the C words. The first one is cash. Since the letter following the k sound is A, then we use the C spelling. And the same is true for creek and curl. Since the letter after the k sound is not I or E, we use the C spelling. Then look at the word price. Even though the C is at the end of the word, it is followed by E, so the C makes the S sound instead of K. And the word cider. C comes before I, also making the S sound. The next rule is the Flossie rule. This is a pretty simple one for students to understand. So it says that they should double the last letter if it has a short vowel and ends in the letters F, L, S, or Z. So students can learn this as the Flossie rule, but they should understand that the O and the Y were added just to make it a memorable word. But the F, L, S, and Z are what's important. Here are some examples. Look at puff, whiff, and muff. The F's are doubled at the end of the word because the word contains a short vowel and ends in F. The same is true for pull, heel, and tail. Since the word ends in L and has a short vowel, double the L. This rule also applies to miss, fuss, hiss, jazz, fuzz, and fizz. Now let's consider silent E. When students learn about silent E, it can be really confusing because they believe since it's silent, it's easy to overlook and ignore. But even though it's not pronounced, silent E can tell a student valuable information about decoding an unfamiliar word. The E actually makes the vowel say its name, and this is important for students to know. So here's a catchy saying that helps students remember this rule. The E hits the vowel on his head and says, "Say your name." Below are some examples. Look at the word time. The silent E at the end of the word makes the letter I say its name, I, in time. The same is true for game. The A says its alphabetical name, A, in game. And rope. The O says its alphabetical name, rope. Now that we've gone over silent E, let's talk about the drop it rule. The drop it rule says to drop E when the root word ends in E and when the suffix begins with a vowel. Here's a chart that students can use when practicing this rule. Look at these examples. Our base word is place, and the suffix is ed to make the word placed. So first we have to consider, does the base word end in E? And it does, so we check yes. Then we skip to the box where it says suffix begins with a vowel. And since our suffix ed does begin with a vowel, we check yes. Since both of those apply to this word, we drop the E before adding our suffix. Since the word placed still has an E in it, this can confuse students. But if we had not dropped the initial E, there would be two E's, one from the base word and one from the suffix. Now look at the word place with the suffix ment for placement. It ends in E, but the suffix does not begin with a vowel. It begins with a consonant, so we cannot check that box. Therefore, we don't drop the E. So in placement, the E is left from the base word. Now look at the word hope. It ends in E, and the suffix ing begins with a vowel, so we do drop the E before adding ing. Now consider the base word hope adding the suffix full. Our base word ends in E, but the suffix begins with a consonant instead of a vowel, so we leave the E in hopeful. Now we have the double it rule, which says to double the final consonant when the suffix begins with a vowel, one vowel is in the word, and the word ends in one consonant. Or you can double it if the rule applies to the last stressed syllable in a multisyllabic word. Here's a chart students can use for the double it rule. In this chart, the word must apply to the 1-1-1 rule, which means that it must have one vowel, it must have one consonant after the vowel, and it must only be one syllable. In addition to the 1-1-1 rule, the suffix must begin with a vowel. And for multisyllabic words, the rule must apply to the last stressed syllable. Look at the first example with the base word pop. The suffix is ing to make the word popping. So the word pop has one vowel, so we check that box. It has one consonant after the vowel, and it has one syllable, so it follows the 1-1-1 rule. Now we also need to look to be sure the suffix begins with a vowel, and the ing suffix does begin with a vowel. So we double the consonant P in popping. Now look at the base word pop using the suffix s to make it plural. Like we said, the base word pop follows the 1-1-1 rule. But based on the suffix, it does not begin with a vowel, so we cannot double the P in pops. Now look at the third example, run. It also follows the 1-1-1 rule. It has one vowel, one consonant after the vowel, and is one syllable long. The suffix ers begins with a vowel, so we double the N in runners.